I was happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from Street Scores. I know I'm late, but I just had to knock all of those other videos out. So now I am finally coming with the day 11 training camp breakdown for the 2023 Washington Commanders, man. You already know Rico of Street Scores. We're going to go through every position group, starting with we even do coaches. I'm going to give y'all a big injury update. We're going to go quarterbacks, running back, wide receiver, all the way down to the DBs and even some special teams updates. And we do have some special teams updates today as well. And I'm really excited to talk about this because today was a really weird practice. No pads, no fans. So the information is a little weird, but we get a lot of wide receiver competition updates. And of course, make sure you go check out the other videos I did. I broke down us signing a new defensive back, Joshua Kalu, and how that affects the roster. Does he have a chance of making the team? And I also did a full breakdown of the first unofficial Washington Commanders depth chart that they just released earlier today. So make sure you go check out all of those videos, and also make sure you go check out all of the training camp clips that I uploaded for y'all to see. And before we dive into this video, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Again, make sure you go check out all of the videos already put out today. This is my fourth one today. If you haven't seen the other ones, go check out the other three. And of course, stay tuned for all of the daily training camp updates, the clips I upload, the breakdowns that I do just like this one, my rookie film sessions, and also be on the lookout for the preseason game live streams. I need to actually go ahead and schedule that now, so y'all go ahead and sign up and make sure you put the notifications on and add the waiting list for the stream. And so make sure y'all stay tuned, man. I'm coming with so much content. Like I said, it's to the point we got to come out with like 3-5 videos a day, man. It's constant work, but it's fun. Without further ado, man, let's get it.
You tell your family you can be a commander.
Man, we are so close to football, man. We are 4 days away from our preseason opener. We have preseason football coming. That's why the depth chart was released. It's an unofficial depth chart, a 90-man roster depth chart. So it's really interesting, but at the same time, it's very, very much so unofficial. And again, today the pads were not on and there were no fans today. So information was a little short practice. Mostly drills and walkthroughs, not a lot of team stuff, and even the team stuff was like a glorified walkthrough and all that type of stuff. So let's go ahead and get to the injury updates, because maybe that's probably why most of y'all are, like, the majority of the reason why y'all are here. Like, Emmanuel Forbes finally was beginning to do some team drills today. He was back with the ones, so it seems like he's 100% ready to go and recover from his groin tweak that he had or whatever's going on. And then Chris Paul was also working with the ones because Sadiq Charles is still recovering from his calf injury. And then Logan Thomas didn't participate in anything today. No team drills, no individuals, no nothing. They're being very cautious with him. And Sadiq Charles, again, individuals. And I believe he did a couple of team things, but not a lot. And when it comes to Logan Thomas, they said that they're slowly progressing him from his calf injury. Rivera said, quote, "He's a guy we want to be careful with. Slowly, gradually, he's a guy that we want to be very careful with first and foremost. The thing that we got to be aware of is he's an older guy. He is coming off of an injury. Yes, it was 2 seasons ago, but you can't be too careful, especially in this situation. And in this offense, knowing how vital the tight end is to the offense, we got to be very smart about that," unquote. So they're taking into account his age, the fact that he had a very serious injury 2 years ago. That's why they're being overly cautious for him, even more than others, because they're being overly cautious with everybody in general. But Logan Thomas is pretty much in bubble wrap. And then, of course, like I said earlier, Sadiq Charles is like kind of participating, but not really. Chris Paul is still getting the runs with the ones, even though they have Sadiq Charles listed as a starting left guard according to the depth chart entering that preseason game. We'll see who actually gets the start when that preseason game happens. But they said that Sadiq Charles is progressing right now, and he's just mostly been doing individual drill stuff, and he looks straight, but they're being overly cautious. And then Curtis Samuel was back full-time today, but at the same time, it was more like a glorified jog through, like walk through type of thing, practice. It wasn't a lot of contact, and it was the first team offense versus backups. So it was more so like working on things and trying different looks and personnel grouping. So Curtis Samuel seems like he's 100%, but at the same time, it was a practice where they weren't doing that much anyway. So it's like, how much do we take from it? And then one negative injury update is that Tress Way even seems to be a little bit banged up. He was apparently experiencing some tightness in his lower back. So they made the decision to bring in other punters as a precautionary measure so that they could still work on things, maybe maybe gain some chemistry with Cameron Cheeseman, who's our starting long snapper, and things like that. And Rivera basically said it's normal to bring in a player at the position who isn't on the roster when working out punters. That's just something that they do. And Rivera did confirm at the very least that Tressway will play in the first preseason game. So it's a little bit of tightness, nothing to really worry about. And he'll be available in 4 days. Well, by the time this video comes out, it may be past 12 a.m., so maybe 3 days. But he'll be there August 11th for the first preseason game. But the 2 punters that they brought in today, one kicks right-footed and then the other one kicks left-footed, just like Tressway, if you cared about the information. Very little stuff, very minute details, but try to give y'all everything I know. And then moving on to the coaches, even though this was like a glorified walkthrough and nothing major, no real contact, no pads, no fans, no nothing, Eric Bieniemy was still extremely loud per usual, yelling, "Wake up, wake up, wake up," and all of that type of stuff. At the very beginning of practice, people weren't even, fully awake yet, it seemed, and he was making sure he was waking them up. And then moving on to the offense versus defense, before we dive into all of the position groups, just overall, for a significant amount of time during practice drills today and team versus team stuff, it was the starting defense versus the second and third string offense. And of course, that did not go very well. And also, I want to let you know that this is one of the least info days yet. So we have enough info to talk about every position group, but again, no pads, no fans, very short practice as well. This is one of the shortest practices, if not the shortest practice so far of training camp. And they're mixing up the matchup. So again, the starting defense versus the backups of the backups on offense. So it's like the information that we take away from the day, just want you to have that in the back of your heads when we're talking about all of it. Like quarterback-wise, there was really nothing significant that came out about Sam Howell today. I didn't hear if he had a good day or a bad day, nothing. But we got a lot of Jacoby Brissett news because, of course, again, Jacoby Brissett and Jake Fromm had to go against the starting defense today with Emmanuel Forbes returning and all of that. So Jacoby Brissett did get some first team reps today as well at a certain point. Like he actually worked with the first team, like where Sam Howell would have been. That was Jacoby Brissett getting those reps, but he was also out there with the 2s, so do not panic. Sam Howell still worked with the 1s, but there was a brief moment in time where Jacoby Brissett worked with the 1s as well. I think 2 different occasions in team drills. He briefly worked with the first team O-line and receivers, with Curtis Samuel included. He got some snaps with the starting offense at the end of each period today, so Sam Howell would start with the starters and then have the majority of the snaps, and then Jacoby Brissett would come near the end of each period. As with everything in camp, context is important here. Shouts out my boy Zach Selby for this information. Rivera said after practice that giving Brissett time with the starters has been a talking point among the coaches for a while now. They want to give him some time with the starters because that's the group he'll be playing with if he needs to be on the field during the regular season for whatever reason. Somehow gets hurt, somehow's trash, whatever. I highly doubt that he'll be trash, and I really hope that he doesn't end up getting hurt. But that's why Jacoby Brissett is here, to be that dependable backup quarterback that can come in and win you games if he needs to. So he's going to have chemistry throwing to Terry McLaurin and all of these guys because he just got here. Sam Howell, even with not much chemistry with the guys time-wise. I mean, he's built a lot of chemistry very quickly, but just time-wise, even Jacoby Brissett has less chemistry with Terry McLaurin and Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson, and Sam Howell does. You got to remember, Jacoby Brissett just got here a few months ago. At least Sam Howell was here last year, even though he wasn't running with the 1s in practice a lot. At least he was here. So even as worried as we are with Sam Howell and his chemistry with the offense and this new offense under Eric Bieniemy, Jacoby Brissett has the same exact problems, and if anything, it's even worse. But Ron Rivera did say that it has nothing to do with Jacoby Brissett actually being a starter. They just want to give him a couple of series with the 1s so that he can, just in case he has to step in, it's not like his first time ever throwing the ball to Terry McLaurin and those guys. Rivera also said as far as Jacoby Brissett, he's a veteran player who can get acclimated quickly. Jacoby got a few reps with the starters at the end of each period to build some chemistry with him and the first group. So, I mean, literally don't overreact. It's nothing that serious. Into the second period, Brissett also threw a really good deep ball for a touchdown. But then a couple of plays after the defense forced 2 turnovers. So, you know, up and down day for the backup offenses, the backup quarterbacks at the very least. It is what it is because Jake Fromm, boy, was throwing some picks today. Moving on to the running backs, today was a much lighter practice than even normal. So it was just very light. Again, a glorified walkthrough, but at the same time, the running backs put in the work that they could, did whatever they could to, take advantage of the time that they had. And Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson, of course, stood out the most, but Derek Gore has been making plays. At the same time, he had that fumble that led to a Derek Forrest touchdown, fumble recovery touchdown a few practices ago. But other than that, he's been actually looking pretty good at running back and a sleeper pickup in free agency right now. I mean, does he make the team? I'm not sure, but this guy has looked really good to be like the 5th or 6th or even worse running back on the depth chart right now. Also, the only real Sam Howell news that I could talk about, and I'm including this in the running back part, is because Sam Howell and Brian Robinson are really working on their screen game timing right now. Like, I think he's doing it with all of the running backs, but there's literally a clip of him doing it with Brian Robinson, and there's like no defensive lineman, there's no offensive lineman or nothing. They're just working on like literally where Sam Howell needs to throw it for Brian Robinson to catch it and still have his running momentum so that he can get as many yards as he can. Sam Howell doesn't want to throw it behind him. He doesn't want to throw it too far ahead and to get intercepted. He doesn't want to throw it at his feet. He doesn't want to throw it too high where he has to like go up and stretch his body to get it, and now he's a target for a big hit. So they're trying to get all of the very minute details down that are going to lead to big changes in his offense. I'm really happy that they're working on such specific little things like that. And then moving on to the receiver position, Curtis Samuel, again, like I said, was taking some first team reps today, so he seems like he's back. It seems like we have Emmanuel Forbes and Curtis Samuel back pretty much 100%. Again, Sadiq Charles is trying to work his way back, and Logan Thomas is sitting out. And then again, I've already updated y'all on the fact that Cody Barton is back. He's good to go 100% as well, but then we have Tressway to worry about a little bit. Also, Rivera after practice said that De'Ami Brown has really stepped up his game, and because of that, the head coach feels that Brown can fill a role as a bigger receiver on the depth chart, which is really interesting because I've been talking about how Bryson Tremaine and Marcus Kemp may have a slight advantage over some of the other wide receivers that are fighting for those last few spots on the depth chart on the 53-man roster because they have height. Everybody else is like 6'1" and shorter, and then Marcus Kemp and Bryson Tremaine are like 6'5" and stuff. They're like the Cam Sims molds. But at the same time, Ron Rivera is saying that De'Ami Brown has been playing so well as a bigger receiver that they may not even care to force it and keep one of those taller receivers. They may just act like De'Ami Brown is that jump ball receiver, which is a really interesting thing. That's really noteworthy to keep in mind when we're starting to do our 53-man roster predictions. Remember to take that into account. Also, on the final wide receiver spots, Rivera said that a lot will be determined by a variety of factors, the first of which being positional flexibility. And again, y'all already know how I feel about this. I know how a lot of y'all feel about this. I prefer to be a master of one or two things rather than a jack of all trades, but that the Commanders just really love this positional flex thing. I see the logic behind it, but I also see the faults behind it. But either way, those last two spots are more than likely going to go to somebody that has some positional flex. And so positional flex is interesting because are you talking about a guy that can play both special teams and be a receiver at the same time? Or are you talking about a guy that can play every receiver position? And Ron Rivera expounded upon that. He said, quote, you're looking at guys that have positional flex that can play more than just whether it's the Z, the X, or the zebra positions. They've got to be able to play all three spots or at least two of those spots, unquote, which is really interesting. So when we're talking positional flex, we're talking about within the receiver position, but also maybe outside of the receiver position as well. But today, Ron Rivera emphasized being able to play more than one receiver position specifically, which is really interesting. So, of course, just a recap, we have 4 locks at the receiver position. Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson, De'Ami Brown, who's supposedly going to be our big receiver possibly. Other than that, we have 2 spots open and a lot of really strong candidates. I mean, we have a great problem on our hands. The secondary and the receiving group, we have a great problem of like, man, we don't know who's going to make the team, who's going to get the most snaps, who's going to start and stuff like that. Again, a great problem to have. I prefer that than, man, we don't have nobody. We need to be dipping into free agency to find somebody. So this is just a different team. This is a way deeper team than we normally have, and I'm excited about that. But when it comes to the positional flexibility where Ron Rivera is specifically talking about today, being able to play multiple positions in the receiver room, that's where Byron Pringle comes in because he's played a lot of his time out wide 45.4% of the time, but has also played in the slot 51.4% of the time. So there goes at least 2 receiver position. So that's where Byron Pringle brings some positional flex right there, and he's also competing for the kick return spot. I mean, he was right behind Antonio Gibson in the depth chart as one of the top 2 kick returners on this current depth chart so far. And then speaking of special teams positional flex, you have Dax Milne, who was our starting punt returner last year and one of our slot receivers. But that's the problem. He's only a slot receiver. He's not an outside receiver or anything like that. He only plays 1 receiver position technically out of the 3. And then at the same time, though, he is your starting punt returner. He's also competing for kick returns as well. So that's his version of position flex. And then on top of all of that, Dax Milne, since Tressway was banged up today and didn't practice, they had him as the holder for kicks. Like where Tressway, the punter, is normally the one holding the ball for Joey Slye to kick it through the field goal. That was Dax Milne's job today, which is really interesting. And then on top of all of that, you have guys that have just been making play after play after play. And you have Bryson Tremaine, who's the big jump ball guy that's been making plays, 6'5". Then you have Mitchell Tinsley, who's arguably had one of the best camps out of any commander, even including the starters, especially the receiver-wise. Mitchell Tinsley has made play after play after play, mostly with the second teams, but also with and against the starters at times. And then he's also a pretty good blocker. And then if you want to try him in special teams, I think he can also succeed in that as well. So you have guys like that competing. And then you also have Casimir Allen, who Nate Kaxer has talked up and said he's really smooth, and that's again my leading candidate to potentially take over as the punt returner for Dax Milne, because Dax Milne is our starting punt returner so far this offseason, and why he was our starter all last season, because he's safe. But he doesn't provide any explosion. You don't expect him to flip field positioning at all. Casimir Allen, if he can be just as consistent, not muff punts, he provides more explosion than Dax Milne, and definitely a higher ceiling and more potential to actually flip some field positionings. And then offensive line wise, I just wanted to update y'all on the fact that, again, Chris Paul is getting all of the starting reps, but on the depth chart that Sadiq Charles is the starter. So we'll see when Sadiq Charles is fully healthy if he's able to take over back as starting left guard. But I mean, like I said in my depth chart video, how can we really depend on Sadiq Charles staying healthy for a full 17 game season? And my answer is no. So if not, you might as well just go ahead and start Chris Paul now, because if he's going to end up having to start at some point, it'd be better to go ahead and have that chemistry. We're working on that now. Him, Charles Leno to the left of him, and Nick Gates to the right of him, potentially starting at center. You might as well just go ahead and have that chemistry down packed now, working on that in the offseason, rather than giving Sadiq Charles all of these meaningful snaps during training camp, and then Chris Paul has to go out there and start by like week 3 or week 4. So I'm done with the whole Sadiq Charles situation, because I just can't depend on him to stay healthy. He hasn't been able to do that for years. Now, I'm a big Sadiq Charles fan coming out of the draft, coming out of LSU. Huge fan, big time talent, but boy, that health situation, but it's always something. Now, I don't know if the calf strain he sustained so far that he's dealing with right now, if we had to play a game today, would he have played? I don't know. I don't know if it's just something very light, but at the same time, I'm tired of seeing his name in the injury report. I'm really sick of it. And then at the same time, Mason Brooks, man, priority undrafted free agent. I think he's really competing strong to take over one of those guard spots, at the very least as like a depth chart guy. I don't think he's going to start at left guard. I highly doubt that, but I think he'll be a dependable backup if you just want to go ahead and cut ties with Sadiq Charles because he can't stay healthy or whatever. And also, Mason Brooks just looks really good, especially in the one-on-one drills a few days ago where he was literally bullying your second-round pick for Darian Mathis. We'll see how that competition goes, but offensive line is really interesting, especially the left guard spot. Then moving on to the defensive line spot, we had Chase Young and Montez Sweat today, since again it was a lighter practice. They were mostly focused on technique and hand usage, which I appreciate when they were doing drills and they were doing team stuff. Since everything was a little bit slower, not full-time, full contact action, they were just really trying to refine their technique, and I appreciate that. And also linebacker-wise, Ron Rivera spoke on Khaleke Hudson after practice today. He said, quote, we've noticed on improvement, and we've noticed a guy playing with confidence, unquote. And that's big time, man. I'm telling you, Khaleke Hudson as your third linebacker is a pretty good linebacker room. I'm not going to lie, especially when we only run 2 linebackers on the field at a time. And even will sometimes run 1 linebacker. Like, we'll more than likely run 1 linebacker more than we are than run 3 at the same time on the field. So as long as we have a solid 3, I think that's pretty good. And then moving on to the DB group, again, Emmanuel Forbes is back 100%, team drills, all of that. It was a lighter practice, but he was back. Also, the number 2 and number 3 offense going against the starting defense did not end well, as you'd expect. Kendall Fuller had some easy pass breakups. Benjamin St-Juste had an easy interception off from. Percy Butler got an interception off Jake Fromm. It was just ridiculous. It was literally back-to-back plays, interception, Benjamin St-Juste, and then Percy Butler right afterwards. So that's pretty much what you'd expect from the starting defense. And that's really interesting that Percy Butler was included in that starting defense as well. Take note of that. I'm pretty sure he's not a starting defender, but the fact that he's getting reps with the ones is big time. I'm telling you, Percy Butler is a sleeper on this roster. Also, Rivera spoke on Benjamin St-Juste growth this season, and he said a lot of things, but he said the most important thing is confidence. So that's 2 confidence compliments for 2 different players, Khalid Hudson and Benjamin St-Juste. That's big time. And then also the Commanders worked out a couple of DBs today, and of course we ended up signing one of them, Joshua Kalua. Again, I did a whole video breakdown on his stats, PFF grades, what position he plays best, his history in the NFL, what college he went to, all that stuff. Y'all already know I do, and a whole breakdown of the DB group, and does this guy have an honest chance of making the 53-man roster? Does this guy have starting potential? All that type of stuff. So if you want to go check that out, go ahead and do that as well. And then lastly, to end the video, special teams. Again, like I said earlier, we worked out a couple of punters. One was a lefty, and then one was a righty. And they're saying that we also brought in a long snapper as well. At least Nikki Javala is saying that. So maybe we brought in 3 special teams guys. And then also Sly said that PATs have been a topic of discussion and wants to be more consistent at them. And it's just almost like, of course, that's literally what it is. When it comes to 50-yarders, plus you got Michael Badgley easily, the money badger. You got him easily. It's not even close. But when it comes to being consistent and kicking extra points, that's where we worry. I mean, going into that Cowboys game, I thought Joey Sly was our franchise kicker. I was perfectly fine with that entering the Cowboys game. Then in that Cowboys game, he was missing easy kicks, extra points. And then it was like, maybe I don't know anymore. I mean, he would have been better off not kicking in that game than going in that game and doing what he did. He should have faked an injury if he knew he was going to be that bad. But again, like I've already said, the kicking competition is a question of talent versus consistency. Just like Sam Howell versus Jacoby Brissett. For the same reasons that we're rooting for Sam Howell, because he has the higher ceiling, it's easier to teach a player with talent to be consistent than a consistent player to teach him talent. It's the same thing with Michael Badgley and Joey Sly. It's easier to teach Joey Sly to be more consistent with extra points than it is to teach Michael Badgley to be able to make 50-plus yard kicks. Literally the same exact parallels. But that's the end of this video. Make sure you get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Do you agree or disagree with any of my points? Again, this is a very weird practice. No fans, no pads, a lot of limited information. So I tried to dive as deep as I could in a lot of things. That's why we had to talk about a lot of press conference stuff to just kind of make it make sense. So man, I'm just over here trying to work with what I got, man. But make sure y'all stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get a notification each and every time I release these informative and opinionated videos. And of course, man, I appreciate all the support, man. Shouts out to all of my sponsors, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors' names you see scrolling on the screen right now. I'm gonna catch y'all later. I am out.